Hello and welcome to Netflix vs. Cinema, the podcast that has taken a week away but is back with a bit of a vengeance. My name is Tosin and I am the host. I am based up in the town called Bromsgrove, somewhere near Birmingham in the Midlands, in the very wet Midlands. And joining me on the hopefully a bit less wet Isle of Wight, as always, is Sharon Bolin.
Hello there, and it's not that much less wet.
It's not that much less wet. And Shaun Harris.
Oh, yeah.
So how underwater are we?
We're sinking. I think someone has pulled the plug out in the middle of the island and we're slowly sinking.
We're bogged. I thought I was, like sometimes you walk across, there's a place called Church Lytton, which is near Rape Rose. And rather than walk miles round, I thought I'd cut across the grass. Big mistake. Big mistake.
I did that last week.
I should have stayed on the path. Frodo.
Yeah, I did. I made the foolish mistake of going down, being given a lift down the town, and I said, "Oh, it'll be fine. I'll get the bus back. It'll be fine." And then I missed the bus, so I had to walk home with my great big boot on.
Yeah,
it was a bit of a nightmare. And I thought, I can't be bothered to walk around there. I did the same thing. I walked across Church Lytton with this cast on my foot.
Oh, God.
It was a bit. I stayed upright, but I was walking along and thinking, this is not a good idea.
Yeah, once you've started, you think it's not worth turning back.
Yeah, you've got to keep going.
Yeah, we actually have a little bit of a sort of like, well, I was about to say a grassy knoll outside our front door. So it's kind of like you walk through, then you have a little bit of pavement, they have some grass, then you have the car, and you usually just sort of go across the thing. And the last couple of days I've been like, nope, I'm walking around and I'm going to find some pavement or find some stairs to get down to the car, because it's just not worth it. It's just not worth the. There's something about wet muddy socks that's just so soul destroying. Yeah. It just sort of like sucks everything out of you. All right, cool. So we obviously what we do on this show, it might not be obvious for you, this might be the first time you're listening to us, but what we do on this show is we go to the cinema every week. We watch things, maybe about 3 films, rate them out of 5. We stay at home and we watch things as well, rate them out of 5. We collect everything together and we see where our money has been better spent this week, hence Netflix versus cinema. Now, this week, a big, amazing, massive thing happened. I sent you guys a text on Tuesday night, and all it said in caps is, I'm in a cinema. I'm in a cinema. I made it. There was nothing to stop me. I made it to the cinema this week, and I managed to see the Iron Claw, which, by my estimation, it might have. I don't think this has anything to do with the fact that I haven't been to the cinema in about 2 months. The best film of this year so far. I think the best film. It has nothing to do with that. But I saw the Iron Claw. What did you guys see in cinema this week?
Okay, well, Sharon and myself, we went to see Wicked Little Letters preview screening, which was which we quite like those preview. Well, we prefer the mystery ones.
The mystery screenings tend to be a better. You get a mystery film, and it's often one that you would think, well, I probably wouldn't have gone to see this, but they're normally corkers, apart from one, maybe one.
Yeah, and
there was one that you walked out of, Sharon, wasn't there?
Yes, I left on one. It was a horror, and I didn't like it. So I thought,
was that the Nun 2 or something?
No, that was the Talk to Me.
Talk to me. Oh, that was it. Yes. Sharon walked out.
Thing. I was like, no.
Yeah, I could tell when I looked at Sharon. I said, "Yeah, I can understand. Yeah, not up my street. This one," which is fair enough.
Okay, cool. But so we saw you guys saw Wicked Little Letters. That's a bit difficult to say.
Yeah.
Wicked Little Letters. And what else?
Well, I saw Madam Web.
Madam Web, yes.
Yeah, Madam Web. And like you, I went. Well, I think it was last week. You went to see the Iron Claw.
The Iron Claw, yes.
That was at cinema.
Yes, that was at cinema. Yeah. Oh, good Lord, Shaun. There's a bit of me that's waiting to hear what you think about Madam Web, because like, I'm not gonna lie, that's a film. It's one of those Sony superhero movies that I'm shopping my clothes up for.
Let's just put it this way: I was warned by many people. Well, not many people, but a couple of people. The ones I said, I asked one of our friendly Johns, our Happy John.
Yeah, Happy John.
Goes, yeah. Why on earth would I want to go? So there you go.
Okay, now I'll tell you. I was going to say, I'll tell you why you go and see it. You go see that because there is a hope. There's a hope of a Shaun rant. Of a classic Shaun rant. Which, well, okay, so, and at home, what have we seen at home?
Do you want to go, Shaun, or you can go? No, because I've been chatting too much, so I'll say mine in a minute.
At cinema, I saw Wicked Little Letters with Shaun, and I also went to see One Love, the Bob White film, which we'll be reviewing that next time because I know Holly has seen it. And it's possible that some other chaps might have seen it by then as well. So that's for next time. But yeah, I saw the 2 films at the cinema this week. And at home, I haven't seen a lot. As you know, I broke a bone in my foot, about my big toe.
Yes.
And because I have to sit with my foot elevated, I just can't be bothered to sort of sit with one leg in the air watching the telly. So I have watched very little, but I did get to see a film. It's a Flemish film on Netflix called Will.
Yes.
And for me on streaming, because I had a bit of a bed day the weekend, so I had a lot of time. So and I watched so much stuff, I can't remember half of it. But I did watch. I did binge watch The Pacific, which I had never really watched. I've seen a couple of bits of it, but I'd never watched it all the way through. So, and I'll probably, if I could review that, I'll explain why. But so yeah, I binge watched that. I saw another one we're gonna put back, Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, Killers of the Flower Moon, which surprisingly none of us have seen yet.
None of us have seen
until this point. Yeah,
until this point. Yeah, I know we had to wait, didn't we? Really? I mean, I think it was the timings when it came to the island. I think it was, and it seemed to come and go. It just sort of seemed to come and then it went again. Bizarre.
No.
So yeah, and I watched quite a lot of other stuff as streaming bits and bobs, you know, like Video Nasty documentaries, and I watched some old movies, Failsafe. Oh yeah, and I watched The Return of the Seven, which there's some films you should revisit, and there's some films you shouldn't. You know what I
mean? But Shaun, if you're ill at home, that sounds like a good comfort watch.
Yes.
Sounds like
Warren Oates is in it, so I really like a couple of bits in it. So yeah.
All right, cool. So we have that, and I have finally seen something that we haven't spoken about in all these years: Watchmen, the TV show Watchmen. Wow. I finally saw that because essentially Sky or Now TV, they have this whole thing where they'll put a show on and then they'll take it off. Like shows disappear off Sky just with no warning; they just disappear. And then I think they're still on there if you're willing to pay a little bit more and rent it to watch. But I'm like, you're already paying quite a bit to stream this stuff. And no, I'm not. And then I noticed that. So I was actually watching Mr. and Mrs. Smith, which I'm halfway through. I was watching Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and then I was like, hang on a second, Watchmen's back. And everybody raved about Watchmen when it came on. So I was like, quick, watch it before they take it away. So I sort of dropped watching everything else to finish watching Watchmen. And I got that.
It's funny because Amazon Prime have started doing stuff with limited ads. You know?
Yes, they do.
So
yeah. To be honest with you, I almost don't notice the ads.
No. Yeah, they sort of at the start, aren't they? And
yeah, they have two ads at the start that are probably about 30 seconds long in total, both of them. Yeah. One of them is about Amazon, buy Amazon stuff. And then the other one is about, here's something else that you can watch on Amazon. Okay, now we're so sorry that we bothered you. Now carry on with what you want to watch. and that's it. Okay. No more ads throughout the of what you're watching.
Oh, well, that's horrible because I watched ITVX and it was just
they are the worst.
Every 10 minutes it was like 3 or 4, and it was like the same 3 or 4 adverts. It was like every 10 minutes, and you can't fast forward them. You can't go away and come back again. It was
were they aimed at you, Sharon? Were they aimed at you?
No, they were just you.
I just wondered if they perhaps do that from the artificial intelligence works out.
They do that, but I think they do that more with their TV, with their Sky boxes, and not so much with the streaming. So not so much with the streaming. I think the streaming and I have to admit, I think ITVX, when it comes to ads, because that's how they make their money. That's how ITV makes their money. You can understand it, but it really is annoying when you're watching a TV show. I mean,
I just thought I can't be bothered with this after this. I watched one thing on it. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not coming back.
Yeah, because I reckon that ITV, when it comes to ads, ITVX is probably the worst, followed by I would say Channel 4. and then by Sky, because weirdly enough, Sky, or at least on Now TV, when you're streaming on Sky, they do have ads, but they very quickly get you back to what you're watching. They're kind of like, we're going to stop it now, but it's going to be like, 20 seconds. Sorry. Get back to what you're watching. Yeah, so I think Amazon's have, because when they did the whole ad thing, I was like, okay, oh my God, okay, Amazon, fine. You take a deep breath, you gird your loins, you press play, and then you're like, and then it's at the beginning, and the show carries on as normal, and at the end you're like, hang on. Oh yeah, they were ads, weren't they? So I think at the moment, I think there's probably going to be more to come from Amazon, but it is very limited. I think it's not that bad at the moment, but I think that they're probably just trying to get us used to it, and the next thing you know, it's going to be like 60% ads and 40% what you actually want to watch. But let us carry on to what we actually watched this week, and let us kick off in cinemas, and let us kick off with Wicked Little Letters. So Sharon, you're going to tell us about what this is about.
Yeah, this is based on a true life event in the early 1920s in a place called Littlehampton in the south coast of Britain, where a series of poison pen letters, as they were called at that time, were delivered to a seemingly respectable lady in the town. She's a church-going spinster, lives with her father and a mother, part of a big family, but they've all moved away. Lives quite an innocuous life, but she's suddenly been getting these really vile, sort of extreme, explicit letters. And her neighbour is a loud, vulgar Irish woman who lives with her daughter. She's reported to be a war widow. This is just after the First World War, and she lives with her partner, who she's not married to. So she is basically becoming the obvious target of it must be her. Who else would it be? It must be her. And so the story progresses where basically we look at this the sequence of events of these letters arriving, and then this lady next door being arrested, and sort of events unfolding as to whether did she write the letters or not. And there's a whole cast of characters, basically people who pop up and have an opinion about whether she wrote the letters or whether she didn't. And it's this sort of this a clash of the titans really between these two characters played by Olivia Colman, and I'm trying to think what her name is.
Jessie Buckley.
Jessie Buckley, that's it. They are the clash of these two titans over these letters that have been bombarding the town. And it starts off with basically there's one lady who gets them, and then it quickly spreads, and then they spread, and that basically anyone and everyone basically have been starting to get these vulgar, explicit letters.
Yeah. So question, I know that obviously that's the whole thing about it. Are they vulgar for the time, or are they just vulgar full stop?
I think you'd say they were vulgar full stop, but at the time they would have been particularly shocking because we're quite used to nowadays people effing and jeffing all the time. But I think in those days it was a bit more unusual in the real events because it was a national scandal. The fact that these letters were they didn't catch the person who did these letters, and the fact that this seemingly perfect woman, this sort of Sunday school teacher, spinster, a member of the church, upstanding member of the community, is being so targeted by this, and that it became like a cause célèbre, really.
I was just thinking that I was reading something about people footballers getting abused online with social media. I'm thinking this could be kind of weirdly topical, even though it's set ages ago. Shaun, what did you think?
Okay, so yeah, for me, this was I know I'm gonna. There's things I want to say, but I don't want to sound prejudiced or racist or things like that. But I mean, we're talking Littlehampton, which is probably the most Edwardian town you could possibly get, a quaint little thing. And I don't miss it, but there's some characters that, shall we say, there's a magistrate judge. I don't know, Sharon, perhaps you could have there. There's a magistrate judge that would just be so out of place. He just would not.
He's played by a black actor. They did the High Court judge.
Oh, I see what you mean.
There's no way in 100,000 years they would have.
In 1923.
They're not in the 1920s. They're not going to have it. It just wouldn't happen. Then, I don't want that to sound like a. I don't want to be pilloried and.
No, we were talking about this, but sort of there's colourblind casting, and then there's sort of being period correct casting, and you can understand how people want to have representation, but it felt like it was so consciously diverse that it became noticeable. Do you know what I mean? Because Yeah, so I can understand why it was done, because like there's the police officer investigating it is played by an Asian lady, and the thing about the police officer that she played, is that she was actually famous for being the first female police constable in Littlehampton, and she was a great big strapping woman from the town. So she was a white English woman. She wasn't a very petite Asian lady. So it's some of these things you think I can understand it.
That's
also
okay. Played by
Yeah,
I can see like played by Angela Vassan. I can see that the cast also has Lolia Defokwe in it, and
he was the postmistress.
Yeah, and see Malachi Kirby, Adam Treasure. I can see that. Yeah, it's an interesting one because I feel like, this is one of these things that I think colorblind casting has been going on stage, and it works a lot better on stage than I think it does on film. And if you're doing something that is period set, but like when they did like David Copperfield. I can't remember what the full title of it is, but like when they did David Copperfield, or when they did that Mr. Something's List.
Mr. Malcolm's List.
Mr. Malcolm's List. And I think when you have those things, which are set in a time period, but are not like historical things, I think it works. I think you can get, I think it works.
When it's a work of fiction, it doesn't matter. Because you think this is a fictional world they've been set in. Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, Copperfield worked really, really well because it was so obvious that they were doing a colorblind casting thing that after a while you're just kind of like, it makes total sense that Chinese man is the father of a dual heritage woman who has a black mother and a white father, kind of thing. It makes total sense, kind of like. And but when it's something historical and you're trying to talk about historical events, it does not. I feel like it jars. I feel like all of a sudden you're kind of like this is taking me out of it. I'm not getting into the story.
It's a bit conspicuous. It's got to the point where there's like only 3 police. Really. There were like 4 policemen in the police station, and one of those was a black officer. And then there was like a little urchin running around in the street, and he was played by a little Asian boy. You just think it was like conspicuous.
I could understand in maybe Southampton or Bristol or somewhere
Cardiff,
in London,
or anywhere like that.
Even at that time, I don't think you would have that.
No.
I don't think you would have that, and I don't think you would have that. And I'm guessing that in this film, nobody mentions anything about it. Like nobody mentions the fact that hang on a second, we've got an Indian woman as a constable. Like nobody mentions anything about that. So
they mention the fact that she's a woman quite a lot, but they don't mention anything else. And you're thinking, why would you pick on that one aspect of her character when maybe there's other targets that you could?
I can understand that it doesn't quite fit. But that being said, what do we think about the film?
That aside, for me, I thought I don't know, there was a bit too much of it. It went on for me, the actual words. I mean, I don't know if there was to try to be some shock value, but it just seemed to be that as the things went on, there was I don't mind swearing at all, but
you thought that, but for you, it got a bit much.
No, not really that much, but I just sort of thought it was a bit repetitive all the time, I thought it was well acted. They especially Olivia Colman's dad. Who was that?
Timothy Spall.
Timothy Spall. Yeah, I could imagine. I seem to remember my great granddad being a little bit that way with a tweedy suit and just being totally grumpy all the time. I think that's probably some hangover from the First World War and losing people and stuff. And but anyway, so yeah, I thought the acting was really good from all the characters, really. But yeah, so
okay. And how about you, Sharon? What did you think?
I didn't like it.
Okay, so first of all, I can imagine that because of you have certain things like you're not a big fan of the language, and you're not a big fan of the language, and I know that nipples in the films you think are unnecessary. So, was it just the language that you couldn't get past, or was it something else?
It was part of the language, and it's part of the attitude. I personally had a bit of a hang up about they really emphasised the fact that this woman was an upstanding Christian member of the society, and her dad was this upstanding Christian man, and they're part of the ladies' Christian whist drive, and they made quite a big point of that. And yet, I did not see a positive representation of Christianity in any of it. I thought she was a hypocrite. I'm not. That is a bit of a spoiler. But one of the main characters who was portrayed as being like this upstanding Christian woman, complete hypocrite. And her father was a monster, a hypocrite. He was homophobic as well. I mean, the fact that they didn't make any racial slurs in the whole film, but he was one of the guys who was saying, "Well, I'm not a Nancy boy," and they talk about queers and using expressions that are offensive. But they made a point of that, but it was the only people who use those slurs are the ones who are supposed to be these Christian upright people. And in the Christian group, they had basically the ones who were like the good eggs all swore, and so it's like they didn't. It seems like it's like liberating to swear. So you have like these Christian ladies who, like the good egg ones, swore just as much as, and their language they used was like in the letters. The use of like this sort of sexual swear words, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute. So they're either all hypocrites, or they don't believe what they say, or they're monsters. They're homophobic. There was not a single positive representation of Christianity in it, and I personally find that a bit tiresome. So I'm thinking it's like
I have to agree with Sharon on that point. In fact, I would say it was thinking about it with the just showing the repression. You know, it was just like anyway. Yeah, no. So and I mean,
she was repressed by she had to read the Bible. And they made a point of like she reads the Bible every day as if it's like.
And I agree with Sharon that I mean I'm not really someone to pick up on that normally or anything like that, but when we spoke about the film afterwards, I agree with Sharon all the way there. It did actually, I did think it did actually show. Well, there was nothing positive, was there, about?
So just a little first base.
A little first base.
Yeah, a little first base. Like it's kind of because it's kind of like It's the stereotype you get, especially in movies and everything like that. That if you're going to have a Christian person, they're going to be a hypocrite and they're going to be the bad guy.
Yeah, it was exactly that.
Yeah, it's
no attempt to sort of do anything other than it was a complete veneer. It was like a veneer, and they never showed a real Christian in it.
All right, okay.
If you're going to use this as an example, and I think the ladies in their Christian group, who some of them were like supposed to be these church-going, upstanding ladies, they were just as sweary as the others. I'm thinking, well, so they're hypocrites as well then, basically. And if they're going to use this language, why would these offensively worded letters be so offensive if they're going to swear like that anyway? Yeah. You know what I mean? Why would you receive a letter and be so outraged by the fact that it's Jeffin and Jeffin in this letter? Then you go along and Effin and Jeffin when you're talking to your face in a public place, on a public omnibus, surrounded by people, and they don't even look at you when you start Effin and Jeffin in 1923. To me, it was just like I didn't like it.
It sounds like it's missing some nuance, but we have to move on. How many stars would you give this?
2.
Yeah, I'm struggling between a 2 and a 3. I'm struggling, I suppose. I mean, I got to be honest. I really didn't enjoy the film. I didn't enjoy the film. I mean, it was almost like a suffrage to watch it. You know what I mean? Not being the thing. So I think I'm probably, and I mean, this might be controversial with a lot of people, and it probably may get a lot of flack on this, but I would agree with Sharon that I would only give this a 2.
All right. Okay. Cool. So 2
My
stars.
friend saw it at the same day, and she loved it. She thought it was funny, hilarious, well played, interesting. Yeah. She loved it. She laughed all the way through it. And so people there are people out there who will like it. I'm just not one of them.
All right, cool. I feel like that is it sounds like we can have a much deeper philosophical discussion about this than the film. I
think it'd be interesting if Holly I've got a feeling Holly might enjoy this movie.
Well, this is being sold as like a little sort of like quaint little British comedy of manners, and I feel like with that there is some sort of like tropes that you drop into, like essentially in a film. Whenever anybody says Christian, you're like, oh my god, they're gonna be the devil, and it seems to be the way. But anyway, let's move on. So let's move on to streaming stuff, and we're going to talk about Watchmen, which I saw on Now TV. As I said, this is something that I saw on Now TV because Watchmen, they released a TV show a while back, and everybody raved about it. It's probably about 6-7 years old now, and it's Now TV took it off, and then it came back on, and I was like, quick, watch this, because I've read the original Watchmen comic, which was written by Alan Moore, I believe in 1985. At least it's set in 1985, and it's set in this world. it's like an alternative history. It's an alternative history where Richard Nixon in the mid-'80s is still president of the United States. You have vigilantes running around everywhere, and they've been running around since then. And it's since essentially it's kind of like the golden age of comics is reflected in this reality, in that it's sort of like in post-World War II, people started walking around with masks and everything and becoming vigilantes, and you start having superheroes, and you have all these people who keep doing it because they feel like, and it goes into the comic goes into the sort of psyche of a person who would put on a mask, put on a costume, dress up as an animal, and walk around a town beating people up. and it goes into it says like, people like Batman. Alan Moore has come on and said Batman would be a nutter, and so he has characters that are obviously supposed to be Batman but are nutters, and they're the most violent people and everything like that. And when this show was announced, when they announced they were going to make a TV series of Watchmen, because Zack Snyder made a film a couple of years back that some people hated because it wasn't the comic. Some people thought it was actually a really good adaptation and everything like that. And then this was announced, and they said we're going to do a TV series of Watchmen, and people weren't sure what it was supposed to be, and they were being really coy exactly what it was supposed to be. And having watched it, I quite like what they did. What they have done is that they have done pretty much a sequel, not to the film that Zack Snyder made, but to the comic. So it's kind of like the comic ends in 1985. Something happens in 1985, and now they've moved everything over to 2019. So in that world, what happens if you get to 2019? What have the characters gotten up to? And there's some things that they do with the characters that I think are really, really interesting. And they use the whole... Because I feel like the original Watchmen in itself, it was used as a... It used this sort of weird idea that Nixon's still in the White House. What would that be? What kind of world would it be to look at certain things about heroism, about what we think about that? And this one, because it starts off in the 1921 massacre in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where there was an area that was called Black Wall Street. And it was because even in 1921, a lot of black people were beginning to become quite affluent in this area of Tulsa, and they had a place where they had buildings and everything like that, and they called it Black Wall Street because all these affluent black people had built a community there. As you can imagine, it's 1921, the Ku Klux Klan are unhappy, and they went in there, killed a whole bunch of people, and burnt that whole area to the ground. And that's how this whole show starts. Then it fast forwards all the way to 2019, and you have this whole thing where you have policemen, and policemen are kind of like vigilantes because they have to wear masks to protect their identities, because there was a thing called the White Night where everybody went in and they just sort of like killed all the policemen and all that kind of stuff. And then this storyline starts developing that shows that it's still in this same world, and we're going to try and figure out. There's a group called the 7th Cavalry, which are pretty much kind of like the Ku Klux Klan reborn, and they are planning something. And you have Regina King. Regina King plays a character who's a vigilante, but also a police officer called Sister Knight, and she's doing the investigation, trying to figure out what's going on, because the chief of police gets killed, seemingly by the 7th Cavalry. But then as she starts pulling the threads, there's this conspiracy that starts coming out of it, and you start realizing what's going on. And I just think that the world that it builds is actually really, really well done. And even if you haven't read the comic, and even if you haven't watched the film, I think that this is just a very, very good detective story that follows through and says, what are we going to figure this, how are we going to find this stuff out? I remember because it was made by one of the guys who made Lost, Damon Lindelof. When it was first announced, I remember thinking, heck no. I'm not doing this. I am not doing this. But he did a really good job. I think that the storyline is great. The way they've weaved in characters from the 80s version of Watchmen back into this, and the way some of them show up in ways that you wouldn't expect. You have Jeremy Irons, who for a large part seems to be in a totally different show. He seems to be in a totally different show where he's surrounded by all these people who look the same. He's surrounded by... He only ever interacts with people with... Well, there's men and there's women, but all the men have the same face. All the women have the same face. And he treats them like absolute rubbish. It's kind of like, what on earth is going on here? There's just so many bits where you're like, what on earth is going on here? And then the way he weaves it together and pulls it together, it is just really well done. It is really satisfying. The cast is excellent. I mean, Hong Chow, Regina King, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Don Johnson shows up as the chief of police in it. Oh, wow. Lou Gossett Jr. Lou Gossett Jr., who I haven't seen in anything for ages. He shows up as well as this guy who claims that he's hung somebody from a tree, even though he's in a wheelchair. Like, how can you hang someone from a wheelchair? How can you hang someone from a tree? You're in a wheelchair. But he keeps going, nope, I did it. It was definitely me. So yeah, yes.
Is Is it like as violent as the movie? Is it like, is there much in the way of violence? I mean, as in like with the Joker, not the Joker, the comedian.
The comedian. There are violent scenes. I don't think it's as violent as the film.
No, right, okay.
I don't think it's as violent as the film. I think this one is a lot more of a thinker, and I still think. Okay, so to go back to your whole Christian thing, right? I still think that I remember reading the comic book of Watchmen, and there's a bit where they talk about Dr. Manhattan, and Dr. Manhattan is this character who is. There's an accident that happens, and he's pretty much the only real superhero in the entire thing. He's the only one who actually has powers.
Yeah, powers.
Yeah, he's the only one who has powers. And I still think that the way that they explore the way he experiences time, because he's outside of time, is the closest thing I remember reading and going, oh my God, this must be what God actually sees. And because they keep talking about him as a god. Like he's so far above human things and everything like that. And the way they do it in the show, they sort of replicate the way he experiences time and the way they go, I think is excellent. I loved the show. I thought it was brilliant. I think it deserved all the plaudits that it got when it was out. And I would give it a 4 out of 5. And the way it ends in a way that it pulls off a very, 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 very difficult trick of ending in a way that it could be a teaser for a season 2 or come back and see what happened. But also it could end right there and you would be totally happy.
Wow.
That's
quite praise indeed.
Oh no, honestly, I was really impressed with this. But I just think the casting is brilliant. I mean, Regina King, I would watch her in anything. So let us go back to and Yahya Abdul-Mateen. He has a tricky job to do in this, and he does it very, very, very well. And I would say no more because that would just be a massive spoiler. Anyway, let us go back to cinema and let's talk about Madam Web. Yes,
Madam Web. Yes.
Sharpen your knives, people. It's Madam Web time.
Let's talk about Madam Web, shall we? Okay,
yes.
The superhero movie. So basically, it starts off in the Amazon jungle. This pregnant explorer, she's looking for this spider that's supposed to have magical properties. And she's been hunting it, and she's got like a bodyguard.
Yeah.
Anyway, she finds one of these spiders, and the bodyguard turns out to be a bit of a nefarious character, not very nice. He says, "I want that," and shoots her. And then some people come out of the trees. Why they don't do anything with the bad guy, I have no idea. Why they let him get away, but anyway, and then they get you. They say, "We can't save you, but if we give you a spider bite, we can save your." It takes place in like 1973, I think, and then
we can't save you, but we can save your unborn child.
Yeah, we can save your unborn child. So save your unborn child, and then I don't know how in the darkest Peruvian she suddenly turns up in the foster system in anyway, and she's so there you go in. She's a paramedic. She doesn't know about these things yet but the person says, the people that save her say, "Oh, we're going to let her go. She won't know, but then when she does know, she'll want to come and find us anyway." And then he switches to the baddie, and he keeps having these nightmares about these 3 young girls that are going to murder him and all that. So he's going to kill them. So he goes on, and he's got like Spider-Man type of powers. And it just so happens that he's got this super boffin woman that can get into the NSA thing and all the traffic lights and all that sort of stuff. Usual sort of thing.
Sure. I can feel you losing interest as you speak.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, it just so happens that all these characters, the 3 girls and her, they turn up together, and she has these visions of what's going to happen. So she sort of half protects them, and then she becomes like a protector for them.
Yes.
So yeah, and then she just turns up at just the right time every time to save these people from this guy who's super powerful 1 minute and then like probably not. There are so many plot holes in this movie. I mean, yeah. Oh, stay with my best mate. You girls stay with my best mate. I'm going to go to Peru. I'm going to find out all this stuff. So, but I mean, it's just like lands in a little plane, like a drug dealer thing. So this thing, I mean, I know there's a lot of people wouldn't say it, saying. So you go to Peru, you find these people, they tell you all about what you got, and then you get back just in the nick of time to save these other girls from, and it's like, you didn't even go to get a visa and that. It must have been, 2 days? Do you know what I mean? 2 days from Boston to fly down to Peru, sort out the people, and then get back again. It's like, yeah, well, how you've got to have some sort of I understand powers, but I don't know how you could get to Peru and back again in like
Okay.
48 hours.
Okay. Shaun, let me put it this way. Even for you, if the film has done a job so that you get to a point where you're worrying about the visa issues of getting from America to Peru, even for you, I think it's fair to say the film has done a bad job. where that's what you're thinking about.
So that's what you come away with. It's like, wow, really lax visa controls in Peru.
Where you're like, wait a second, that would never happen.
You've got border patrol, surely.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like to do it that fast. You know, I mean, wouldn't have imagined that she'd even have a
supersonic spider, by the sounds of it.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess that there wasn't much else to say in the rest of the film because which is why you came here with visa issues.
there's a few action. Well, there's quite a few actiony bits in it which are a bit daft because, as I say, these things they just got inconsistencies. You know what I mean? They would. It's like, oh come on, this guy's he's like been doing it for years. He's got like superpowers, and he's an imbecile when it comes to trying to fight people. You know, he falls into traps, and it's like, get out of here. And he does monologuing. You know that great monologuing.
Yeah.
You've got it now. Whoops, oh dear. Look.
You see now, this is the problem. This falls into a category of film where I feel like you can't talk about the film without talking about the business behind how they're making these films. So it's the fact that Sony, these are all characters that show up in Spider-Man comics originally, right? But you find all these superhero films that Sony make, they have the rights to a lot of the Spider-Man characters, but they come up with a deal with Marvel where Spider-Man doesn't appear in these films. So you have all these characters that took their reason for existing from Spider-Man being there. Either they're Spider-Man adversaries or the Spider-Man allies or everything like that. And they're trying to make films about these people without Spider-Man there, which means that these characters have no reason to exist. But they keep trying to make these films, and these films keep having logical inconsistencies. They keep having tying themselves in pretzels to try and give people something to do. And it just and there's this Spider-Man shaped hole in Morbius, in Venom, in Kraven the Hunter that just keeps showing up because these people don't have a reason to exist if there's no Spider-Man. Yeah. But they keep trying to, and I don't understand how they keep making them because apart from Venom, I can't believe these things are making money because they make stupid films that seem to just assume that everybody who likes comic book movies is a childish 2-year-old that doesn't understand logic. Yeah. So, and
this is probably aimed at, I should imagine, a young adult audience, a teen audience.
Yeah, but they have brains.
Yeah. You sure?
They can figure stuff out. It's just that Sony doesn't think that they do. Sony, and I don't understand how they keep getting good people. I mean, this is the thing. They must be spending a bucket load on these films because they get good people to be in these films. And the only reason I can imagine that good people are in these films is because they are getting paid a lot of money. So Dakota Johnson, Sydney Sweeney, Tahir Rahim, the only reason they would be in these films is because there's a buckload of money. Because I cannot imagine for 1 second that somebody says, hey, you want to be in a Spider-Man movie that doesn't have Spider-Man in it? And they'll go, yeah, that sounds like a great career choice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, but anyway, sorry, I'm running my mouth off and I'm talking about a film. I'm talking about all the reasons why I don't want to watch this film. You actually, you actually went and watched the film. You actually had the courage to go watch this film. How many stars would you give it? Two.
Yes.
And I could have done that beforehand because everything.
I'm a creature of habit. I'm very predictable.
You could pre-fill in the score.
I should just say, Tosin, you rate it for me, and
I'll just agree it.
I'll agree.
I mean, I saw the trailer for this and I just thought, this is stupid. This is stupid.
Before you even get in the door.
Before you even get in the door. Now let's go.
Why didn't I listen to Happy Johnny? Why didn't I?
No, you didn't.
Philosophy for life.
You didn't listen to Happy John because every now and then, Shaun, you want to get angry and you want to get the kind of feeling that might get you writing a wicked little letter. So write a wicked little letter to Sony, telling them why. What is wrong with you? Do the decent thing and let go of these characters. Let Disney pay you a whole bunch of money and they can go into the MCU. But stop making these superhero movies because you suck at them. Unless it's the Spider-Verse movies. Apart from that, you suck. So, anyway, sorry. Let us go to Netflix now. And let's see if we can find some redemption in Flemland. What do you call Flemish? Belgium, I guess.
Yeah.
Belgium. That must have been like Flamingo. And okay, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to have to do some research and see where the title Flemish actually comes from. But you saw a Flemish film called Will, which when you first mentioned this, I thought it might have been a TV series that I actually appeared in, but. Yeah. But no, it wasn't. This was a Flemish film called Will. What is this about?
Yeah, there's no horrible histories actors to be seen in this one. It is basically a Flemish film set in 1942 during the height of the Second World War, and this part about Belgium, obviously, was invaded at the very beginning of the war and has been occupied since 1939. And young men, when they come of age, have a choice of where they serve. They will get conscripted, or they will be given an occupation. And the will of the title is a young Flemish Belgian. Obviously, the Flemish is a distinct ethnic group within Belgium. They have their own language, have their own culture. They sort of live a sort of, they are sort of like quite distinct to they speak a slightly different language. They don't speak sort of the French of other parts of Belgium, so they do speak Flemish. And Will, though he's a young man, and he basically has been assigned to become a police officer. And he is told on his first day of duties that your job is to basically to uphold the law, and that you can watch and you don't get involved. You can look at stuff and you can witness it, but don't get involved. So you do your job, and part of your job is just to just
plod along.
Cooperate.
Yeah.
And obviously they are working under the direct command of. They have their own officers, but you get the feeling they're under the direct command of the sort of the National Socialist, the Nazi Party, who are occupying their country.
Yeah.
And on the first night of his job, he's literally been in the job for 2 weeks. He's out on his first solo patrol with his best friend, who was recruited at the same time. And they go out and they witness a German officer who is harassing a Jewish family, basically extorting them for money, saying, that if you give me your cash, if you give me some of your jewelry, your paintings, I will turn a blind eye and that you won't get deported. And they witness this, and then they have a bit of a confrontation with this one officer, and things sort of some dramatic things happen, and the events of this first night basically have repercussions for the next sort of year of the story. Basically, these two, their eyes are suddenly awakened to how that they know that they're in an occupied country, but their eyes are really opened as to what it entails. That there is a fine line between cooperation and collaboration, and at some points their role has been to cooperate but not to collaborate, so that they can, if there's going to be like a raid where they do a clearance of a particularly Jewish area, that they're there to maintain the peace, but they're not there to drive people out of their homes. They're not there to sort of drive them onto the cattle trucks. They're there just to sort of maintain their peace, but they don't actually participate. That's the job of the soldiers, the German soldiers.
Yeah.
And as the story goes on, this young man, basically his home life becomes into conflict with what he's witnessing as a police officer. And he has got involved with a sort of a young family, and he has become aware that they are part of like a resistance group. And so then he's torn between his desire to help to do his job, to help with this with the resistance, and also to sort of maintain like the equilibrium because of the events of the very first night. This is what happened with this German soldier. And so there is it's sort of these themes running through this story. But I think the main theme is the differences between cooperation and collaboration. And as this young man, he's suddenly been confronted with this real life issue about what you do in that situation. So it deals with issues of the Second World War, as you would imagine, the sort of occupying forces, what happens with Flemish Jews who are sort of they're the same citizens as they are, and how do you turn a blind eye when there's a penthouse suite becomes available? Do you then think, oh, hang on, this is a really nice apartment, or do you think, why is that penthouse suite suddenly empty?
Available? Yeah.
And available, and then if you sort of witness like a small child being abused, do you just watch that because you're not cooperating, you're just watching it, or do you think actually this is wrong? And there's like that moral dilemma. And then if you fall in love with someone who's part of the resistance, do you assist them, or do you there's these questions of conscience all the way through. And I think it's one of those, it's like almost like a spiral of disasters for this young man. It starts off he's quite optimistic that he could be able to do this, he could be a policeman, he could do his job, and then one sort of mistake leads to another mistake, leads to another, and then there's this descent into chaos for him as the story unfolds. So yes, it's an interesting story, quite powerful, obviously all subtitled, the interesting cast of characters, where some of them are I think they've tried to steer away from the stereotypical, jackbooted sort of Nazi that we become to see in cinema. They've tried to introduce some sort of nuances with some of the characters. Obviously, there's some of them that are out and out Nazis who you think there's a reason why Nazi sounds like nasty, because they just are.
Yeah.
But there's also those themes of what happened in the Second World War and countries that were occupied for the whole length of the war, and the impact it had on ordinary people and the police force, how these were people, they're police officers in Belgium and France, in occupied Channel Islands. They were still police officers. They had their job to do, but they're also forced into cooperation with a party who they didn't agree with their policies.
So how many stars would you give this then?
I thought it's a good film. It was received a lot of plaudits in its own country. I mean, it's received awards for Best Actor, Best Film, Best all sorts of things. So it certainly was a well-made film. It wasn't a jolly film. There's some sort of tough moments in it. I thought it was certainly an interesting film and worth a watch. So I would give it a 4. I think it was, it's a challenging film in places, but it's certainly one of those ones worth persevering. To add to that lexicon of films that look at the Second World War, not in a slightly different way, but it sort of opens our eyes who weren't in occupied countries to say, okay, if we lived in not an occupied country, we can sit back and say, well, that wouldn't have happened if it was in Britain, because we wouldn't do that sort of thing. But you think, well, actually, would we have been any different with to sort of surviving in unoccupied states like that? So I thought it was interesting. I wouldn't say it was a half a minute, but it was certainly an interesting film to sort of get your teeth into.
Cool. And I found out, and it's obvious, Flemish is from Flanders. The area is called Flanders, which is where we get Flemish from. I'm like, oh, that's what it is. It's not just the last name of a Simpsons character. It's actually a place. All right. And now we go back to cinema. And we are going to talk about The Iron Claw. So I will give a little bit of a preview about this. So The Iron Claw is based, I remember I saw the trailer for this, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, because it's based around a wrestling family called the Von Erich family, who were mainly active in the 80s. So like in the 80s and everything like that. And I remember watching them on the TV. I remember watching the Von Erich family. There were 3 of them. They were brothers. They were a tag team. One of them fought barefoot and usually wore like yellow pants. And I was like, oh yeah, the Von Erichs. I remember this. And I remember also like when we're because obviously this was in the 80s. There was no internet. I was in Nigeria. And you started, every now and then, things started dribbling and drabbing through about, oh, this happened to, that one of those brothers, something bad happened to them, or this, or and but you're kind of like, you take everything with a pinch of salt, because you're like, yeah, it's the 80s. People made stuff up. Rumors seem to, even without the internet, rumors seem to just sort of fly around the place. And this film, The Iron Claw, is made about this family, and the fact that they're making a film about like a dramatic movie about a wrestling family should tell you that there's something there. And the way I would describe this film is, there's a certain trope in literature, especially nowadays. There's black female literature, black female authors who write about African experience. There seems to be a trope. There seems to be like a trend for their books. And my wife keeps reading these books and telling me about this happens and that happens and that happens. And I've essentially termed this as a subgenre, which is bad things happen to black women. That's pretty much what it is. Bad things happen to a black African, and when she tells me, "Oh, this happened," oh, and this happened to them, and then that happened to them, and this film is like bad things happen to bad things happen to straight white men. And honestly, because what happens in this family, you have the father, Fritz von Erich, who is quite a domineering dad, he always keeps talking about the fact that he himself he was never allowed to have a world title shot in wrestling when he was a wrestler. So he has all boys. I don't know what kind of power the man has, but he doesn't have a daughter, just has boys. It just has boys, and they all go into wrestling. They're not even given a choice. They all go into wrestling. And the main brothers are played by Zac Efron, Jeremy Allen White, and Harris Dickinson. So they go into wrestling, and it's all pretty much about them trying to get their dad's approval by being in wrestling and trying to do all this stuff and working themselves really hard and getting really big and really buff and trying to do everything it is to sort of, as the dad says, get the belt back in this family. And the film sort of plays out as to what happens to them, because there's this whole thing called the curse of the Von Erichs that the film starts off talking about, like with a voiceover, somebody saying they always said my family was cursed. I never really believed them, and it follows on going as to what happens and what this curse does to the family, what the wrestling thing does to the family, what goes on with the whole thing, and it is. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that it's not a barrel of laughs.
No,
it's not fun. It's not fun, and there's times where you're going, oh come on, no way, oh come on, that. Then you finish watching the film and you go on Wikipedia and you're like, what the hell? you find that pretty much everything they tell you in the film happened. There's a scene towards the end of the film that proves to me with no shadow of a doubt that I am now a father, because it had me in bits. Even though when I went and looked at the history, I realized that they fudged some things in that scene to make it a neater story and to make it nicer and to make the point, to drive the point home better. They fudged some things, but all in all, I think that they did a really, really good and really respectful job with this film. I think it's really difficult to do a respectful job with something that's like this, because it would be so easy to do a sensationalist, oh, look at this, with this story. Shaun.
You exactly hit the nail on the head. The one thing what I thought about this was they didn't. I mean, some people look at wrestling as a joke, don't they? You know what I mean? Yeah. Some people said, yeah. And that did not come into that at all. It was like a serious. They were really, really serious about it.
It's their life. It's their life. It's their business. Life, you know? It's everything. Yeah.
Normally, people say, "Oh, that was." It wasn't portrayed as like exactly fake. Like Tosin said. It wasn't portrayed as fake. What happened? The bit that I really felt was, obviously, there's professional wrestling and amateur wrestling. And I'm assuming, Toes, that the youngest brother was going to go off to the Olympics, was a amateur wrestler. And yeah, but because he was going to go to the Olympics, wasn't he?
And as a discus thrower.
Oh, he was going. Oh, right. Okay. I missed that point. Then.
Yeah. But he was going to go to the Olympics, and there was a big thing about their dad. Essentially, Sharon, in a very early scene, their dad sits them around at a breakfast table and goes, right, we all know Kerry's my favorite, followed by Kevin, then David, then Mike. Yeah. And he ranks his sons, and he says, there's always a chance to go up the league. That's the kind of thing he does. Yeah. He ranks his son, and he says, like, you can get more in my affections, essentially, if you do better in wrestling. Then you can move up in my affections, yeah. And Kerry's his favorite because he's about to go off to the Olympics in 1980s. But those of you who know your history like you do, Sharon, know that there's something happened in the
1980 Olympics. Was boycotted by the USA.
Yes, boycotted by the USA, and it's kind of like, and that's just like one of these little drips of tragedy that just hit this family and you think this tiny thing is almost kind of like, what would have happened if that hadn't happened? What would have happened to this family? But anyway, Shaun, I sort of interrupted you talking about what you thought about this film.
No, that's fine. I said that, but it's like you going in now. You went and you looked at the brothers. Well, I wasn't aware, I wasn't aware of these brothers and that because I was never really. But it was quite interesting. I went and actually looked at the boycott of the Olympic Games, of what countries boycotted and what countries, and then obviously with the 84
games were boycotted, weren't they?
Yeah, the 84 in Los Angeles, same thing. The Russians and some of the Eastern Bloc. But yeah, I mean, the thing is with this film, I agree. It was like, oh, the poor people. And I thought the father played the part really, really well.
Holt McClanahan.
He wanted to live. He wanted to live what he didn't achieve. He wanted
to live through his sons.
Yeah, through his sons. So, I mean, I liked it. I thought it was really, really well done. And I don't know. I'm not so sure about Zac Efron's acting, I don't know if I could quite.
The thing is, I really liked Zac Efron in this.
Yeah.
I really liked him. I mean, he's kind of like the way the character is portrayed is kind of like he's almost kind of like the most boring brother.
Yeah, boring. Yeah,
he's like the most boring brother, and he's kind of like almost like the straight man, the linchpin. Where stuff happens around him, and it's not until later on in the film that he actually starts. You actually get a scene where you feel like he's actually telling you what he thinks, because throughout the rest of the film, he's hardly doing it. He's hardly doing anything, and it also has one thing I wanted to say about the women in the film. So it's a film
that James in it, hasn't it?
It's got Lily James and it's got Maura Tierney in it, and they play, well, essentially the women. They are partners of, well, one of them of the father, one of them of one of the brothers. And I feel like it could be accused of saying that they don't have much to do, and sure enough, their parts are small, but I still feel like they're really key. I feel like the women in the film are key, and for one of them, this is my way out. This is out of this goldfish bowl. This is my another pair of eyes. And I think like Maura Tierney has some scenes in this that without her and without her doing it, the story doesn't land as well. So even though they don't have as much time on screen, I think that it's because not every story can be focused on absolutely everybody. This is a story that's mainly based on male machismo and what that does to you and everything like that. I still thought that they were really good, and I still thought that they had a space in the film, and I thought that was also a very, very difficult balancing act. And I know everybody every year has their films that if they could have voted for awards, they would have voted for. And I know I haven't seen that many in cinema this year, but this film, I would have been voted for awards, because I think that what they achieve in this film is amazing. I think it is great. I think it's a beautiful film. It's a sad film, but I mean, it's so respectful.
How accessible would you say it was? Would you say it was accessible for someone like me who knows nothing about wrestling, has no interest in it?
100%.
And then I saw the trailer, I was like, nah, it's not for me.
I remember you saying that, Sharon, that you wouldn't, you said,
yeah,
no, I'm probably not going to give that one. But this is surprising, and it's not what I thought it was going to be either.
Yeah.
It's not what I thought it was going to be. It really wasn't. I thought I was going to be a sensationalist from the trailer, but it's not at all.
There's sports films, aren't there? And there's like sports films, and then there's sport films.
Sports films.
Where the sport is like a device to tell a story. I think if it's a device, it's fine, isn't it? Because it's a way in. But if it is the whole story, then it's like, I'm not interested in wrestling.
I quite like the family scenes when they played football as well. I quite like those.
I don't think this film is a sports film.
It's not a sports film. No, I wouldn't say it's a sports film.
I would not say it's a sports film. I mean, I think it's really accessible, and like what Shaun says, like the scenes that hit the home the hardest sometimes are just the family scenes, where they're like there's the scene that I was talking about that sort of like made me go, okay, yeah, I'm definitely a dad. Towards the end of the film, it's a family scene, and it's like, and those are the ones that hit home the hardest. You might need to take a box of tissues with you, though. Honestly, you might need to take a box of tissues. I feel like I knew that bad things happened, and I went in expecting them, but I still felt like it wasn't totally like just this melancholic, depressing thing. But there is, you might want to take a box of tissues with you. But I really, really enjoyed it. I would give it a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Now, yeah, for me,
wow.
This was a real surprise for me. Real surprise. I thought it was really, really good. Nothing what I expected. Totally different. And I think I agree with a lot of things that Tosin said. But what I liked about it is the wrestling was portrayed as it wasn't. Do you know what I mean? We watched the WWF and it's like all the talking and all that, and it's just like, yeah, come on, that's not going to happen. It wasn't portrayed like that at all. It was portrayed, right, this is a serious thing.
Yes.
It's not sensational. It's not.
Yes.
We're going to get. We're still going to get hurt and stuff. And I really liked that in that movie. So I'm going to go with Toes on this.
Yep. Yeah. I think 4 out of 5. I mean, the truth is, it might get a 5. This is the kind of film that I feel like Holly might give a 5. But I feel like there's the films I give a 5 are films that I come out of the cinema going,
wow, yeah, there has to be.
I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything.
That's it. I agree. That's the 5 thing. It's like you can't really dish out 5s. I think from our criteria, it has to be.
Yeah, like
sort of
for me,
super exceptional.
I remember 2 films that I've seen that I've thought I wouldn't change anything. This film's absolutely perfect. Inside Out and Little Miss Sunshine. I remember watching them and straight away going, yes. Oh my, and just having that feeling of yes, this is what film was made for. This is not quite there, so it's going to be a 4 out of 5. Especially when I went and looked at some of the fudges that they did, because to make it fit into a film format, which I guess is okay. But anyway, now for a final thing, we're going to go back to streaming services, and we are going to talk about the Pacific. So, Shaun, tell us about the Pacific.
Okay, the Pacific. Now, this came out, probably 2010, I think, after Band of Brothers.
It was after Band of Brothers, yeah.
It was after Band of Brothers. Band of Brothers was like so successful and so good, and probably the best TV series about the Second World War possibly ever. I think probably better than any film I've seen. That was actually... So this is the Pacific, and when it first came out, I thought, oh, this was good. And I did watch, so back in the day, I did watch a couple of episodes. I think probably looked at the first 2. Now, as the episodes go on, it starts off in Guadalcanal, and one of the soldiers wins the Congressional Medal of Honor, and then he stops becoming he starts to sell war bonds, and he becomes popular in the States and all that sort of stuff. A bit like that Flags from Me Regime. Pardon?
Captain America does that.
Yeah, basically, yes. That's what I thought of. And then, so the Guadalcanal campaign finishes, and they go to Australia, and then there's a few romances and different things going on and all that. And I think at that time I thought, like, well, I want to see action, you know what I mean? I want to see what the Pacific. So, but then after, I would say from the 4th episode onwards, it just becomes really, really good. It just becomes really spot on. They go about their, the small island hoppings they did, how terrible it was, and you've got obviously I think it's based on a couple of people. It's funny enough, Rami Malek, he plays somebody called Snafu, and then it gets good because you get like a group of combat vets, and things happen and all that, and it's quite graphic and it's quite bloody and it's quite violent. And then later on you get Okinawa, that was the place where, not quite the Japanese homeland, because and like civilians, so got really, really gritty. One of the episodes was where obviously PTSD, or ST,
PTSD,
post PTSD. Thank you very much. And goes in hospital, and there's that bit, and then he decides to go back. And you've also got the theme of the chap who won the Congressional Medal of Honor just wants to go back. He feels guilty, and he does actually go back. But you probably need to watch the thing to see what happens to him. So it was great. So, I really, really enjoyed it.
Sure. Can I just check something? You mentioned Rami Malek, and if I'm correct, Rami Malek is one of those actors that you don't always gel with.
I don't know exactly, yeah.
And but I'm guessing that you started a point that you didn't finish. I'm guessing you're saying that, but you said, funnily enough, Rami Malek, and I'm guessing you were saying, funnily enough, Rami Malek is actually good.
Really good in this, yeah, really, really good, because he starts off as he's
be quite young in this then, because
he is really young, yeah, he's super young, but he's like they sort of meet up. Should we say, he starts off not a nice character, and he takes the teeth out of any gold teeth and that, and he's quite and there's a scene in it, probably right now, when this sort of idealist that's joined the Marines is gradually getting more and more and more, and just like accepting the fact that this is what happened. And he starts, and he goes, and Remy goes, or Snappy says, don't do it, don't do it, whatever you do, don't do it otherwise. But he's he's sort of deep down, although he's should we say a little bit obnoxious, he's also deep down quite a good character, and in the end he ends up bonding with the group and all that. And then the final episode, when the war's finished and all that, it just sees him on a train going away, and his mate's falling asleep and that, and he just sort of gets up and goes. Yeah, I was really, really surprised. So it's really worth staying with this. As I say, it doesn't particularly. Yeah, you've got the Guadalcanal campaign, and then it's a bit.
It doesn't come out of the blocks firing.
It doesn't come out of the blocks firing, but once it does, from episode 4 onwards, it's absolutely brilliant. It's really, really good, and I would put that quite high up with Band of Brothers.
All right, so the Band of Brothers and the Pacific were both made by, they were like a joint venture between Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
And Shaun, they're making a third one.
Tell me, what is it?
It's good. Masters of the Air.
Oh, I have heard that. Yes, Masters of the Air.
It's on Apple.
It's going to be on Apple TV, which I know that you have access to.
Yes, I do. Yes.
So
yeah, they were doing an episode a week, so it's like if you want to watch the whole thing, you probably have to wait till the middle of March, when all of it will be ready. But if you want to watch it an episode a week, then it's out. The first ones are out now.
I probably will wait until it finishes because I think that's the whole thing. Because I remember like with Walking Dead and Game of Thrones and all those. Yeah. Game of Thrones, I did used to try and watch because that was.
Because everybody would talk about it and ruin it for you.
Yeah, that's it exactly.
You've got to watch it weekly.
Yeah, so I shall watch Masters of the Air then. That'll be quite good.
But before we do that, how many stars for the Pacific?
4 stars.
4 stars for the Pacific.
Yeah, big 4 stars, as I say. It took a while to get going, slow burn, but once it got going, I really thought it was well acted, and the scenes they're pretty nasty scenes in it. But I from what I've seen of the actual footage of the Pacific War, very, very realistic.
Good stuff. So 4 stars for the Pacific. And all that is left to ask on the show is, who do you think has won this week? Let's see if you can get your amazing powers of deduction.
I'm going to say that I think probably Netflix and Friends has maybe picked it a little bit.
I think streaming has taken it this week.
Yeah.
It's Shaun. It's not even close.
Oh right, okay.
I think cinemas had like 2.
Yeah, cinemas of the 3 films we had on the cinemas, 2 of them were 2. Right. So 2 of them. So we have 2 2s on the 4. So yeah, Netflix has had 4s. Netflix and Friends 4s across the board. Cinema this week has given us 2.7. Let's round it up 2.7. So yeah, it seems like after a couple of weeks of cinema going, big guns, big guns, Oscar. We're not getting to, because I think the BAFTAs have happened now, and
it's just the Oscars to go, isn't it?
Yeah, BAFTAs have happened, just Oscars to go. Awards season is dwindling down, and you can see that people are beginning to say, okay, cool, we're not an awards movie, but here, how about this? Yeah, little film.
Try this.
Yeah, try this. Little film that could. So yeah, we'll do that. But I guess we'll talk about awards and stuff after the Oscars, because those are the big ones. I know the BAFTAs, they had things like Oppenheimer did well, and Poor Things, Emma Stone won, and all that kind of stuff. But
Zone of Interest did quite well as well.
Zone of Interest
awards, but Zone of Interest picked up 3 or 4.
Yeah, we like that. We like Zone of Interest.
All right, cool. Yeah, so yeah.
Well, would you watch that again, Sharon?
No,
you wouldn't.
I think it's that sort of film. I don't. Well, that was maybe a bit too hasty. It's like Schindler's List in some ways.
I know.
I've never watched Schindler's List again after watching it the first time.
No.
I think some of them, they have enough impact that you remember it quite
good point.
well. And I think I'd probably remember the key bits, and I'd probably just as baffled by the baffling bits if I watched it again. But no, I don't know that I would.
Yeah, that's the same thing with me. I'm like with 12 Years a Slave. Never watching that again. Never watching that again. It's like I've watched it once, brilliant film, got it, made all the points. No, I'm watching it again. So right, okay. I think until next week when we shall see some. Oh, actually, wait. June. I'll tell you what. Dune's out already. Good.
June's out Friday.
Friday.
Good. Things are just. This is what I'm thinking. This is why I said we had to talk about everything this week, because we're not going to have time. I mean, next week we know we will talk about Bob Marley, One Love, and we have a full list of things to talk about on Netflix. Still haven't spoken about Rusting. We haven't spoken about Ban the Sadist videos. We haven't spoken about Killers of the Flower Moon. In all the time we've been doing this podcast, none of us have seen Killers of the Flower Moon. So that's probably going to be for next week. In the meantime, if you want to tell us about how can you call yourself a film podcast and not watch Killers of the Flower Moon, get in touch with us on Twitter at Netflix via Cinema, on Facebook at Netflix via Cinema, on YouTube at Netflix via Cinema. You might notice a pattern. Tell us what you think. It will be great to hear from you. And until next week, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
Thank you ever so much for joining us.